Lost in Space featured some pretty incredible special effects for its day.
Lost in Space.
Since Lost in Space was left unresolved, I wanted to resolve it.
Danger, danger. I do not compute. Antimatter Man in the 3rd season, and There Were Giants in the Earth in the 1st season.
3 seasons, 83 episodes. A family stranded in space, a robot with flailing arms, and a villain so compelling he swallowed the show whole. From a premise stolen from a Victorian novel to a cast that genuinely couldn't stand each other off camera, here are 20 facts about Lost in Space that'll make you see that Jupiter 2 in a completely different light. Danger. Danger. You're not ready for this. Number 20. The show was based on a comic book Irwin Allen never properly licensed before it was a television series, before it was a pitch meeting, before Irwin Allen wrote a single line of the premise he would sell to CBS as his own original vision. Lost in Space was directly adapted from a Gold Key comic book called Space Family Robinson, published in 1962.
The Robinson family got lost in space.
Yeah, the series was set in the far future, 1997.
The Robinson family stranded in space. The same premise, the same architecture. Allen took it, built a show around it, and did not secure the rights with anything resembling legal thoroughness. The dispute over ownership and credit ran for years after the show became a hit. Gold Key eventually received acknowledgement. It took longer than it should have and came less gracefully than it deserved. Number 19. Irwin Allen originally wanted a completely serious show. The camp is not what he intended. The comedy isn't what he pitched. The rubber monsters and the shrieking and the elaborate cowardice of Dr. Smith and the general atmosphere of cheerful absurdity that defines Lost in Space in the cultural memory. None of it was in the original vision. Allen's pilot was a straight-faced science fiction drama with genuine tension, real stakes, and no concession to comedy whatsoever. Number 18. Jonathan Harris rewrote his own character without asking anyone. Dr. Smith, as written, was a cold, calculated, genuinely dangerous spy. A villain with menace and patience and real intent to harm. Jonathan Harris read those scripts and found them beneath him in the specific way that only a classically trained actor can find a villain role beneath him. So he rewrote it, not officially. He did this unilaterally, without consulting the writers, the producers, or Irwin Allen. Number 17. The robot had 3 different people inside it. The robot, the show's single most iconic creation, the character whose image defined Lost in Space for 60 years, the machine whose voice became one of the most imitated sounds in science fiction history, was not one person. It was never one person. The man inside the suit performing the physical movements was one performer. The voice coming out of the speaker was a completely different person recorded separately and dubbed in post-production. For specific sequences requiring particular physical demands, a 3rd performer stepped in. Number 16. Billy Mumy was a seasoned professional at 11 years old. The instinct is to look at Will Robinson and see a child who got lucky. A kid plucked from obscurity and placed at the center of a hit television show. That is not what happened. Billy Mumy had been working professionally in Hollywood since the age of 6. By the time Lost in Space cast him, he had accumulated more on-set hours than several of his adult co-stars, had appeared in Twilight Zone episodes that required emotional performances of genuine complexity, and had developed technical skills, hitting marks, finding light, sustaining performance across multiple takes. Number 15. June Lockhart was not the first choice for Maureen Robinson. The role existed before she did. Maureen Robinson, the mother, the center of the family's emotional gravity, the character whose steadiness grounded everything around her, was cast with a different actress during early development before the production was reconceived and the role was reoffered. June Lockhart came in during the rebuild, brought the part fully to life, and became so completely identified with Maureen Robinson that the original casting is now a footnote that requires active research to uncover. Number 14. The Jupiter 2 set was the most expensive in television history. When Lost in Space premiered in 1965, the Jupiter 2 interior was not merely an impressive set. It was the single most expensive television set ever constructed, a record that stood at the time of the show's premiere. and that CBS executives had serious reservations about before the first episode aired. The circular design demanded custom construction. The multi-level build required engineering solutions that had no precedent in television production. The electronic dressing was designed and fabricated from scratch. The audience never knew. They just believed it. Number 13. Jonathan Harris systematically dismantled Guy Williams' starring role. Guy Williams was cast as the lead. The billing said so. The premise said so. The pilot said so. By the middle of season 2, it was no longer true, and the process by which it became untrue was neither accidental nor subtle. Jonathan Harris lobbied writers for more Dr. Smith material. He cultivated relationships with producers who controlled script assignments. The show was called Lost in Space. Guy Williams was the one who got lost. Number 12. The show premiered at the exact peak of the space race, September 15, 1965. 4 years after Gagarin, 3 years before Apollo 8, 2 years before the Apollo 1 fire that reminded everyone what the cost of ambition actually looked like. Lost in Space arrived at the precise cultural moment when space was not science fiction. It was the news. It was the national project. It was the story America was telling itself about what it was capable of and where it was going. Number 11. Irwin Allen ran his sets like a military commander. The show that American families watched together on Friday nights, warm, adventurous, safe, designed for children, was produced in an atmosphere that cast members described in later interviews with words that don't belong in the same sentence as family entertainment. Schedules were absolute. Allen did not negotiate with clocks. Allen built shows that made audiences feel good. He did not appear to consider the feeling of the people building them a relevant variable. Number 10. The original pilot has never been officially released. It exists. That much is established. The original unaired pilot, filmed before the network demanded the tone shift, before Dr. Smith was reconceived, before the robot was added as a late creative decision, whether this is rights complexity, studio indifference, or something more deliberate is a question nobody in a position to answer has chosen to address publicly. Number 9. Angela. Cartwright beat dozens of established child actresses for Penny. The casting process for Penny Robinson was not a casual search. It was among the most competitive child actress auditions in 1965 Hollywood, a field populated with names who had existing credits, existing profiles, existing relationships with casting directors who could have moved any of them to the front of the line. That quality sustained a character across 3 seasons and made Penny Robinson real in the specific way that only certain performances make fictional people real. Number 8. The show was canceled without warning mid-development. A 4th season was not a rumor. It was in motion. Scripts had been commissioned, writers were working, set designers were developing concepts for environments and storylines that the production had every reason to believe would be filmed. The cast had not been told otherwise. The cancellation arrived from CBS without advance consultation, without ceremony, to stop building it before they had spent significant time and resources on something that would never exist. Number 7. Mark Goddard has spent decades saying exactly what he thought of it. Don West was dashing, capable, the romantic lead, the man of action. Mark Goddard played him with the commitment the role required and has spent the decades since being one of the most bracingly candid former cast members in television history about what that experience actually felt like from the inside. Number 6. The robot's most famous line was never actually said, "Danger, Will Robinson." 4 words. So embedded in the cultural vocabulary that they appear in dictionaries as an idiomatic reference. So universally recognized that people who have never seen a single episode of Lost in Space know exactly what they mean and where they come from. They were never said, not in that order. Number 5. Irwin Allen put himself on screen more than some cast members. The producer who controlled every element of his productions with documented thoroughness, schedules, budgets, creative decisions, the temperature of the room, also could not resist placing himself inside the thing he controlled. Allen appeared in background shots, crowd scenes, and transitional sequences across Lost in Space with a regularity that the people who worked for him noticed, and none of them found particularly surprising given everything else they knew about him. Number 4. The shift to color was a television set sales strategy. Season 1 was black and white. Season 2 was color. The creative justification for this transformation, the expanded visual possibilities, the richer world building, the more immersive experience, was real but secondary. Number 3. Dick Tufeld created an icon in an afternoon. The voice that defined the robot. Flat, mechanical, weighted with a specific kind of authority that suggested intelligence operating without warmth. He created an enduring icon in an afternoon under deadline pressure. That is how some of the best things get made. Number 2. The cast couldn't be in the same room for decades. Reunions require goodwill. Goodwill requires the passage of enough time for the specific nature of old wounds to soften into something manageable. The wounds between certain Lost in Space cast members were specific enough and deep enough. Number 1. Guy Williams died alone, far from the industry that diminished him. He was Zorro before he was Professor Robinson. A genuine star, charismatic, physically commanding, possessed of the kind of screen presence that casting directors spend careers trying to find and rarely do. By the end, he was peripheral. After the show ended, he did not recover the career the role should have launched. From a stolen premise to a star who died forgotten in Buenos Aires, Lost in Space was stranger, darker, and more consequential than anyone who dismissed it as camp ever stopped to consider. It launched careers and ended them. It inspired astronauts and broke actors. It built a world that millions of children believed in completely, produced by a man who ruled his sets by fear and couldn't stay out of his own camera frame. Which fact hit hardest? Tell us in the comments. Warning, warning. This show was never just a show.